At 37 years old, Reece earned a salary of $118,000 as a senior audio engineer at Warner Music Group in Nashville. He was a man who understood frequency and vibration, who could hear the subtle lie in a pitch-corrected vocal or the manufactured warmth of a digital reverb. His life was a study in authenticity, or so he believed. On a Friday night in late September, seated in the amber glow of Husk Restaurant on Rutledge Street, he found himself at the center of a performance so dishonest it made his teeth ache. The air, thick with the scent of shrimp and grits, and the low murmur of Nashville's elite, felt suddenly thin and cold. Across the polished, reclaimed wood table, his wife Zaria placed her hands flat on the surface. Her knuckles were white. To his left, her three closest friends, Hallie, Nova, and Pia, sat in a silent, expectant row, a panel of judges in designer dresses. Zaria's deep brown skin, usually radiant, seemed tight around her cheekbones. She took a breath, the kind an artist takes before a difficult passage. "Reece," she began, her voice a carefully rehearsed tremor. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." He said nothing. He simply watched her, his gaze steady. He noted the dress she was wearing, a sleek, black $950 number from a boutique in the Gulch he'd paid for last month. He noted the diamond earrings, a $2,200 anniversary gift from him. He noted the way Pia subtly angled her phone on her lap. And he had a chillingly accurate guess as to whether the screen was on or off. It's not working for me anymore," Zaria continued, a single, perfect tear escaping her left eye and tracing a glistening path down her cheek. "I need more. I feel like I'm suffocating. I feel like I'm settling." The word settling hung in the air between them, more offensive than any profanity. It was a word designed to wound, to provoke a desperate, defensive reaction. He could feel the collective gaze of the three friends intensify, leaning in to witness the expected collapse. They were waiting for the begging. They were waiting for the promises, the frantic pleas, the crumbling of a man's pride. This was the moment their plan was designed to produce. Zaria delivered the final line, the kill shot they had all workshopped. "Reece, I think we're done." The silence that followed was profound. It was not an empty silence. It was heavy, filled with the weight of their expectations. Reece picked up his glass of water. The ice clinked softly. He took a slow, deliberate sip. He placed the glass back down on its coaster with a quiet thud. He looked at Zaria, whose face was a mask of tragic performance. He looked at Hallie, whose lips were pursed in feigned sympathy. He looked at Nova, who was trying to appear bored. He looked at Pia, who was barely concealing a smirk. They had no idea what was coming. They had built a cage for him, and he was about to thank them for holding the door open. "Okay," Reece said. The word was so quiet, so devoid of protest that for a moment it seemed like no one had heard it. It was a flat, clean audio signal with no distortion. Zaria's practiced sadness faltered, her brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "What? What did you say?" "I said okay," Reece repeated, his voice calm and even. He met her gaze directly. "I agree. We're done." He then methodically placed his linen napkin, a pristine white square, next to his plate. The plate held the last remnants of a $52 pan-seared scallop dish, a final, extravagant meal he had insisted on ordering for the table, knowing it would be the last thing he ever bought her. The gesture was final. It was the sound of a door closing softly, but with an unbreakable lock. The stunned silence from the three friends was louder than any argument he could have made. They all froze, their faces a tableau of disbelief and dawning horror. The test had gone catastrophically, beautifully wrong. But what happens when a man you've underestimated for years finally shows you the real script? Do you think he would just let his life be torn apart for a test? We're about to find out. If you've ever felt underestimated, stick around because this story is for you. And if you enjoy stories where quiet strength wins the day, consider subscribing to Love Beyond Pride for more. Just 2 years earlier, the world had felt so different. Reece remembered the day they moved the last box into the craftsman bungalow he'd bought in the 12 South neighborhood. He had purchased the house for $480,000 2 years before he even met Zaria, a smart investment made with a down payment saved from a decade of meticulous work and late nights in the studio. By the time she moved in, its value had already climbed past $650,000. "It has such good bones, baby," Zaria had said, twirling in the empty living room, her laughter echoing off the hardwood floors. "But the kitchen is a disaster, and the master bath, a tragedy." Reece, carrying a heavy box labeled "Kitchen, Fragile," had just smiled. He loved her vision, her ability to see potential where he only saw drywall and old fixtures. He loved her, or more accurately, he loved the woman he believed her to be. The renovations began almost immediately, funded entirely by him. A gut renovation of the kitchen cost a staggering $55,000, complete with quartzite countertops, custom cabinetry, and a suite of high-end Thermador appliances. Zaria picked everything, her taste impeccable and expensive. She wanted a $4,000 Miele built-in coffee machine. "Imagine, Reece, perfect lattes every morning without ever leaving the house," she'd argued. He'd signed the check. He was making good money, and what was money for if not to build a beautiful life with the woman you loved? Their life together was a collage of these domestic scenes, each one tagged with a price he was happy to pay. He remembered Saturday mornings. He would be up at 7 a.m., the house quiet. He'd go to the expensive coffee machine and make her a perfect latte, just as she'd imagined, carrying it up to the master bedroom they'd expanded for another $30,000. She would be buried under a $100 duvet, her phone already in her hand, scrolling through Instagram. "Thank you, baby," she'd murmur, not looking up. He'd then go downstairs and make breakfast. He wasn't a fancy cook, but he was consistent. Scrambled eggs, bacon, toast from a local bakery. He'd eat his at the kitchen island. Looking out at the backyard, he'd spent $15,000 landscaping to her specifications, complete with a stone fire pit she'd used exactly twice. Zaria worked in marketing for a boutique fashion label downtown. Her salary was around $60,000 a year, but her lifestyle was that of someone earning 4 times that amount. Her closet was a testament to this, a meticulously organized collection of designer goods. A $2,400 Burberry trench coat for the 3 days a year it rained in Nashville. A row of Louis Vuitton handbags, the cheapest of which was a $1,800 Speedy. He never questioned it. He assumed her salary covered her personal spending, a naive assumption he would later cringe at. He paid the mortgage, the utilities, the car notes on both her $43,000 BMW 3 Series and his own modest 2018 Honda Accord. He paid for their vacations, their dinners out, their groceries from Whole Foods that always cost upwards of $400 a week. He saw it as his role. He was the provider, the steady bedrock upon which she could build her beautiful, curated life. He didn't need fancy things. His pleasure came from his work, from the quiet satisfaction of perfectly balancing a drum track or finding the soul in a raw vocal take. His watch was an $89 Timex he'd had for years. His wardrobe consisted of jeans, comfortable t-shirts, and a few well-made jackets. The contrast was stark, but it never bothered him. He was proud to give her the world she wanted. Their friends, particularly her circle of Holly, Nova, and Pia, saw their life as an aspirational model. When they came over for brunch, they'd rave about the house. "Zaria, you have done wonders with this place," Holly would say, running a hand over the cool quartzite. "Reece, you are one lucky man." "The luckiest," he would agree, refilling their glasses with $40 a bottle Prosecco. He had no idea he was being appraised. his generosity mistaken for weakness, his quiet nature for a lack of backbone. He was simply happy. He was a man in love, living in a beautiful house, building a life. He had no idea it was all a facade, a carefully constructed stage set for a play in which he was the only one who didn't know his lines. He was the stable foundation, and he never imagined the residents were plotting to burn the whole house down. The first crack in the facade appeared not with a bang, but with a quiet, digital whisper. It was a Tuesday night, exactly 2 weeks and 3 days before the dinner at Husk. The time was 11:17 p.m. Reece was in his home studio, a sanctuary he had built in the spare bedroom. The walls were lined with acoustic foam, and over $30,000 worth of equipment, monitors, mixing boards, microphones, glowed with soft indicator lights. He was working on a project for a rising country star, a delicate ballad that required a perfect, intimate vocal mix. His phone buzzed. It was a notification from their shared family calendar. Zaria had added a girls' night for the upcoming Friday. He needed to sync it to his work calendar on the studio's dedicated iPad, a device they both used. He picked up the iPad, a $700 Pro model he'd bought for her birthday last year, and opened the calendar app. As it synced, a banner notification slid down from the top of the screen. It was from iMessage, a group chat named The Council. The preview text was from Pia. Pia, Z, you cannot back out. Friday is the day. He needs a reality check. Reece froze. His fingers hovered over the screen. The Council. He knew that was the name for Zaria's group chat with Hallie, Nova, and Pia. He'd heard them reference it jokingly. He had never felt the need to look before. Trust was the bedrock of his world, but the phrase reality check aimed at him felt like a stone in his gut. His heart began to pound, a low, heavy kick drum against his ribs. He told himself it was nothing, a misunderstanding. But his hand, seemingly with a will of its own, tapped the notification. The iMessage app opened, and the world tilted on its axis. He was looking at a conversation that had been going on for weeks. He scrolled up, his breath catching in his throat. His name was everywhere. Hallie. He's gotten way too comfortable. You give a man like that everything, and he thinks it's his right. Nova. Honestly, Z, you're a 10. He's a solid 6. And that's on a good day. The math doesn't add up. Zaria. It's not that he's bad, you guys. He's just simple. He's content. I want a man who is hungry, who wants more. Reece is happy with his little songs and his quiet nights in. Pia. Contentment is a death sentence. You need to shake the tree, see what falls out. Reece felt a wave of nausea. His little songs, the work that gave him purpose, that paid for the very device she was typing on, reduced to a childish hobby. He kept scrolling, a digital archaeologist unearthing the bones of his own marriage. The plan began to take shape about a week ago in the chat history. Hallie. Okay, here's the play. You have to make it a test, a breakup test. Zaria. A what? You guys are crazy. Pia. No, she's a genius. You tell him you're done. You lay it on thick. The settling, the suffocation, all of it. You make it dramatic. Nova. And you do it in public. So he can't make a scene. Husk is perfect. It's classy. He won't yell. Hallie. The goal is to see him break. We need to see him beg for you. He'll promise to change, promise you anything. That's when you know you have all the power. Zaria. And what if he doesn't? What if he just agrees? A string of laughing emojis followed from Pia. Pia. Please. A man like Reece, with a house like that, a wife like you, he's not going anywhere. He'll grovel. He'll cry. It'll be pathetic, but it's necessary. You need to know for sure that he knows his place. Zaria. And we all go? To watch? Hallie, we're your support system. We'll be there to pick up the pieces of his dignity. We'll order champagne after he leaves. Reece sat back in his $1,500 Herman Miller studio chair, the air driven from his lungs. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a conspiracy. A premeditated, cruel piece of theater designed for their entertainment, with his humiliation as the headline act. Every loving gesture, every sacrifice, every dollar he had spent to build their life was being used as evidence of his weakness, his predictability. They weren't just attacking his marriage. They were attacking his character, his very essence as a man. He scrolled down further, his blood running cold. Pia. Make sure you cry a little, Z. Sell it. Think about that trip to Paris he said was too expensive. Channel that. Zaria. I booked the table. Friday at 8 p.m. The council is in session. He looked around his studio. The gold records on the wall, plaques representing millions of sales he had helped create. The complex array of wires and faders, a system he understood as well as his own circulatory system. He had built a world on precision, honesty, and harmony, and in the palm of his hand, he held the proof that his own home was built on a foundation of lies, contempt, and discord. The ballad on the monitors was still playing, a soft, heartbroken melody. The singer's voice was full of genuine pain. Reece reached out a trembling hand and pressed the spacebar. The studio fell silent. In that crushing silence, the audio engineer, the man who fixed things, died. And a new man was born. A man who understood that some things are too broken to be repaired. A man who now had a new project, deconstructing his own life with the same precision he used to mix a multi-platinum album. The performance was set for Friday, but now he knew his lines, and he had no intention of playing the part they had written for him. The 2 weeks that followed the discovery were the longest of Reece's life. He was living inside a pressure cooker, a silent, smiling actor in a domestic drama whose script only he had read. Every morning felt like a fresh betrayal. He would wake up, the memory of the text messages rushing back in an icy wave, and have to turn over and see Zaria sleeping peacefully beside him in their $8,000 king-sized bed. The day after he found the texts, he had to force himself through the morning routine. He went downstairs to the kitchen, the scene of so many of his quiet acts of service. He stared at the $4,000 Miele coffee machine, the machine he'd bought to bring her a small piece of joy each morning. Now it looked like a monument to his own foolishness. He made her latte anyway. The habit was too deeply ingrained. He carried it upstairs and placed it on her nightstand. "Morning, baby," she mumbled, her eyes still closed. "Morning," he said, his voice a flat, dead thing. He went back downstairs and made himself a cup of instant coffee, a cheap $8 jar of Folgers he kept in the back of the pantry. The taste was bitter and harsh, and it felt appropriate. Later that day, she came downstairs wearing a new dress, a vibrant floral print piece that must have cost a fortune. It was a $600 self-portrait dress. "Do you like it?" she asked, twirling for him. "I just needed a little pick-me-up. Feeling kind of down lately." He knew what she was doing. She was performing the prelude to her grand drama, laying the emotional groundwork for the breakup. She was feeling down. He was supposed to ask why. He was supposed to fuss over her. He looked at the dress, a frivolous purchase made with his money, and felt nothing but a cold, hollow ache. "It's nice," he said, turning back to his laptop. Her smile faltered for a second. "That's it? Just nice?" "I'm sorry," he lied, not looking up. "I'm just swamped with this project, big deadline. My head is buried in it." It was the perfect excuse. His work had always been a black box to her, a convenient reason for his moods or his silences. She accepted it, but with a flicker of annoyance. He wasn't playing his part correctly. He was supposed to be attentive. Each day was a new test of his resolve. He felt like a spy in his own home. He'd hear her on the phone in the other room, her voice low and conspiratorial, and he knew she was talking to the council. He saw her smiling at her phone and knew she was reading their cruel jokes and vicious strategies. The outrage accumulated inside him like a static charge, 1,000 tiny shocks a day. One evening, they were sitting on the $7,000 sectional sofa in the living room, the television playing some reality show she loved. She was scrolling through her phone, a small, smug smile on her face. "You're so quiet lately," she said, her eyes still glued to the screen. "Is everything okay with you?" This was another prompt, another cue for him to express his devotion and concern. He was supposed to say, "I'm just worried about you, baby. You seem distant." He refused to give her the satisfaction. "Just tired from work," he said, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. "It's a really demanding mix." "Right. Your little songs," she said, a dismissive edge to her voice she didn't even try to hide. The phrase hit him like a physical blow, the same condescending words from the group chat, now spoken aloud. He felt a surge of pure, hot anger. He wanted to stand up, to hold the iPad in front of her face and say, "My little songs paid for this couch, this house, and the phone in your hand." But he didn't. That would be giving them the drama they craved. It would be falling into their trap. Strategic restraint. That was the new mantra. He took a slow breath, the air feeling thick and heavy. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on the television screen, seeing nothing. Her casual cruelty was another piece of evidence, another log on the fire. The weekend before the scheduled performance at Husk, she made her move. "Reece," she said, approaching him while he was cleaning the grill in the backyard, "I think we need to talk. A real talk. Just you and me. Let's go out next Friday, somewhere nice. Like Husk." He looked at her, at the feigned sincerity in her eyes, the carefully constructed concern on her face. He knew this was the invitation to his own execution. He felt a strange sense of calm descend over him. The waiting was almost over. "Okay," he said. "That sounds like a good idea." She seemed taken aback by his easy agreement. She had expected resistance, questions, anxiety. His simple compliance was not in the script. "Oh, good," she said, recovering quickly. "I'll make the reservation, 8 o'clock. "Perfect," he said, turning back to the grill and scrubbing with a renewed, furious energy. As he scraped away the burnt-on residue, he felt a grim sense of purpose. She thought she was setting a trap. In reality, she was walking into one he had been silently building for 2 weeks. She was planning a test, and he was planning a verdict, and he would deliver it with a stillness that would shatter her world. Each lie he told, each moment he played dumb, was another brick in the wall he was building around his heart, a wall she would never again be allowed to breach. The day after Zaria casually scheduled his public humiliation, Reece began his own strategic planning. The anger that had been simmering inside him for days had cooled into something harder and more useful: resolve. This was no longer just a personal betrayal. It was a calculated attack on his life and his assets, and he would respond not with emotion, but with precision. On Monday, during his lunch break, he didn't go to the cafeteria at the Warner Building. Instead, he walked 3 blocks to a sleek glass tower on Demon Bruin Street. On the 24th floor was the law firm of Vance & Associates. He had an 11 a.m. appointment with Deidre Vance, a name he'd gotten from a trusted colleague in the legal and business affairs department at work. She was known for being sharp, discreet, and utterly ruthless in divorce proceedings. Her office was minimalist and immaculate. Disposée en masse wem, with a panoramic view of the downtown skyline. Ms. Vance was a tall, elegant black woman in her late 40s, dressed in an $8,700 Armani suit that radiated authority. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Mr. Hayes?" she said, gesturing to a leather chair opposite her vast mahogany desk. "My colleague said your situation was time-sensitive. Her rate for consultations was a steep $750 per hour, a price Reece was more than willing to pay for expertise." "It is," Reece said. He took out his phone and the studio iPad. "I have something you need to see." He spent the next 20 minutes walking her through the iMessage thread. He didn't editorialize or add emotional commentary. He just presented the facts, pointing to the key messages on the iPad screen. He showed her the initial planning, the discussion of the breakup test, the specific instructions for Zaria to sell it and make him beg. Ms. Vance listened intently, her expression unreadable. She scrolled through the messages herself, her sharp eyes missing nothing. When she was done, she set the iPad down carefully on her desk. "Well," she said, a dry, humorless smile touching her lips. "In 20 years of family law, I have seen a lot of foolishness. This, however, is in a category of its own. This is not just grounds for divorce, Mr. Hayes. This is a gift." "A gift?" Reece asked, confused. "Evidence of malicious intent," she explained, her voice crisp and clear. "In Tennessee, which is an equitable distribution state, the court considers the conduct of the parties. Your wife and her friends have meticulously documented a conspiracy to inflict emotional distress for their own amusement and to manipulate you. A judge will not look kindly on this. It completely undermines any claim she might try to make for alimony or a larger share of the marital assets." A weight Reece hadn't even realized he was carrying began to lift. "Now," Ms. Vance continued, pulling a legal pad toward her, "let's talk assets. The house in 12 South. When did you purchase it?" "In 2016. 2 years before we were married," Reece said. "Is her name on the deed?" "No, only mine." Ms. Vance made a note. "Excellent. That makes it premarital property. While any increase in value during the marriage could be considered a marital asset, her conduct significantly weakens her claim to it, especially since you can prove you paid the mortgage and for all the renovations from your sole income." They spent the next hour compiling a detailed list. The house, now valued at approximately $850,000, his 401k from Warner with a balance of just over $210,000, his pension, which was his alone, the 2 cars. He had statements for everything, meticulously organized in a folder on his laptop. He had been a saver his whole life, a habit his father had instilled in him. He never knew it would one day be his primary weapon. "She has her own salary," Reece added, "about $60,000 a year." "And I imagine a lifestyle far exceeding that," Ms. Vance surmised, looking at the descriptions of the designer clothes and handbags in the texts. "She will claim she needs spousal support to maintain the standard of living she enjoyed during the marriage. These messages," she tapped the iPad, "will make that argument laughable." By the end of the meeting, they had a clear, multi-step plan. Step 1. Reece would attend the dinner at Husk. He would let Zaria play out her scene. His calm agreement was critical. Step 2. He would give her a clear, unequivocal deadline to vacate his premarital property. Sunday evening. Step 3. On Monday morning, Ms. Vance would have a process server deliver the divorce papers. The petition would include, as Exhibit A, a full notarized transcript of the council group chat. "We will file for divorce on the grounds of inappropriate marital conduct," Ms. Vance stated. "We will make it clear that you are not contesting the dissolution of the marriage, merely the division of assets based on her actions. She will be served, and so will her friends, as they will likely be subpoenaed as witnesses. Their little group chat is now a legal document." The thought of Hallie, Nova, and Pia being served with legal papers sent a grimly satisfying shiver down Reece's spine. "The papers will offer her a settlement," Ms. Vance concluded. "She walks away with her personal belongings, her car, which you will pay off to be done with it, and nothing else. No alimony, No claim on the house, no portion of your retirement. If she fights it, we proceed to discovery, and these messages become public record in a court filing. My guess is she and her friends will want to avoid that at all costs. Reece walked out of the law office an hour later, the Nashville sun bright in his eyes. He felt lighter than he had in weeks. The initial shock and pain had been replaced by a cold, clear sense of purpose. He was no longer a victim waiting for the axe to fall. He was a strategist, a man with a plan, executing a precise and devastating countermove. The fee for the initial consultation and document preparation was $4,500, an amount he transferred from his savings without a second thought. It was the best money he had ever spent. He had his script. He had his legal team. All he had to do now was wait for Friday night and deliver the performance of a lifetime. Friday night arrived wrapped in the humid embrace of a Nashville autumn. Reece dressed with methodical care. He chose a simple, dark navy button-down shirt that cost $120, a pair of well-fitting jeans, and his favorite leather boots. He wore his $89 Timex watch. He was not dressing to impress or to fight. He was dressing like himself, a quiet statement of authenticity in the face of the elaborate fiction he was about to confront. He drove his 2018 Honda Accord to Husk, arriving at 7:55 p.m., 5 minutes early. He handed the keys to the valet and walked into the restaurant. The hostess led him to a prime table on the upstairs veranda overlooking the garden. Zaria, Hallie, Nova, and Pia were already there, a united front. They were sipping on $15 cocktails, their laughter a little too loud, a little too forced. Zaria was in the black $950 dress, Hallie wore a shimmering gold top, Nova a severe architectural dress, and Pia a flowy bohemian number. They looked like a panel of judges for a reality show, which, in a way, they were. "There you are," Zaria said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We ordered you an old-fashioned, your favorite." "Thank you," Reece said, taking his seat. The gesture, meant to show how well she knew him, now felt like a taunt. The small talk that followed was excruciating. They talked about work, about a new gallery opening, about the relentless Nashville traffic. Reece contributed just enough to be polite, giving short, non-committal answers. He was a blank canvas, refusing to give them any emotional color to work with. He could feel their frustration mounting. He was supposed to be nervous, fidgety, sensing the impending doom. Instead, he was calm. He was an engineer monitoring a live recording, waiting for the performance to begin. They ordered dinner. Reece, knowing this was the final act, insisted on ordering for the table. Appetizers of pimento cheese and fried chicken skins, and for his main he chose the pan-seared scallops with a celery root puree, one of the most expensive items on the menu at $52. It was a quiet act of defiance. This final meal would be on his terms. As the main courses were cleared, a palpable tension settled over the table. The moment had come. Zaria squared her shoulders and placed her hands on the table, just as she had practiced. Her friends leaned in, their faces a mixture of predatory anticipation and feigned concern. "Reece," she began, her voice catching with practiced emotion, "I'm so glad we could do this. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately." Reece simply watched her, his expression neutral. He let the silence hang, forcing her to continue without any prompting from him. "This isn't working for me anymore," she said, her eyes welling up on cue. He remembered Pia's text, "Make sure you cry a little, Z. Sell it." The tear that escaped and rolled down her cheek was a masterpiece of amateur dramatics. "I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I need more from a partner. I need someone with more ambition, more drive. I feel like I'm suffocating. I feel like I'm settling." The word hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. He looked past Zaria to her friends. Hallie was nodding slowly, a look of profound, false sadness on her face. Nova was examining her manicure, affecting an air of boredom. Pia was watching him with wide, unblinking eyes, a faint, cruel smile playing on her lips. They were drinking in his humiliation. Zaria took a deep, shaky breath for the finale. "Reece, I think we're done." The silence that followed was the silence of a held breath. This was it, the climax of their little play. They were all waiting for him to shatter, for the begging, the pleading, the frantic, desperate promises. Reece let the silence stretch for a full 10 seconds. He picked up his water glass and took a slow sip. He set it down gently. He looked directly at Zaria, his gaze cutting through her performance. "Okay," he said. The single word landed with the force of a physical blow. It was not in the script. Zaria's face, arranged in lines of tragic sorrow, collapsed into confusion. "Okay, that's all you have to say?" "Yes," Reece said, his voice as calm and clear as a perfectly mastered track. "I agree. We're done." He then turned his head slightly to include her friends in his gaze. "I assume this is the part of the breakup test where I'm supposed to beg for you to stay?" The color drained from Zaria's face. Hallie's fork, which she had been holding midair, clattered onto her plate. Nova's bored expression vanished, replaced by wide-eyed shock. Pia's mouth fell open. What are you talking about?" Zaria stammered, her voice stripped of all its artifice. "I'm talking about the council," Reece said, his voice dropping to a low, chilling register. "I'm talking about the plan to shake the tree. The discussion about how I'm a solid 6 and how I'd be pathetic and grovel. I'm talking about the instructions for you to cry and sell it." He let the words sink in. He was quoting their own private messages back to them. The looks on their faces shifted from shock to pure, unadulterated panic. They were exposed. Reece placed his napkin on the table. It was over. "I'll need you to have your things out of the house by Sunday evening," he stated, his voice devoid of any emotion. "It is my premarital property, and you are no longer welcome in it." He looked at Zaria, whose eyes were now wide with a horror that was entirely genuine. "I have arranged for a service to deliver divorce papers to you on Monday morning, wherever you happen to be. I suggest you find a good lawyer, though I doubt they'll be able to do much." He then looked at each of the friends, one by one, holding their terrified gaze. "Hallie, Nova, Pia, I hope this little game was worth it. My attorney, Ms. Deidre Vance, found your group chat transcripts very, very interesting. You can expect to hear from her as well." With that, he reached into his pocket, pulled out 2 crisp $100 bills, and placed them on the table. The $200 was more than enough to cover the bill. "Enjoy your dinner," he said to the 4 frozen, silent women. And then he stood up, turned his back on the wreckage of his marriage, and walked out of the restaurant into the cool night air, leaving them to the sound of their own silent, screaming panic. He didn't look back. He felt no anger, no sadness, just the clean, quiet hum of a problem being solved. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic, a cascade of consequences that Reece observed from a quiet, dignified distance. He spent Saturday in his studio, not working on music, but methodically changing passwords, removing Zaria's name from shared accounts, and forwarding the damning iMessage transcripts to his personal email, creating yet another backup. The house was unnaturally quiet, the silence a balm after years of accommodating Zaria's noise. On Sunday afternoon, his neighbor from across the street, a kind older woman named Mrs. Gable, sent him a text. "Reece, there's a U-Haul truck in front of your house. Just wanted to make sure you were aware." Reece had already arranged to be at a friend's house in East Nashville. He replied, "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for letting me know. All is well." He could picture the scene perfectly. Zaria and her disgraced friends, forced into manual labor, hauling boxes and furniture out of the beautiful home they had taken for granted. He imagined the furious, whispered arguments, the blame shifting from one to the other. The vehicle would not be a large moving truck, but the smallest, cheapest model available, the 1995 a day pickup truck size from U-Haul, a testament to how hastily this retreat was being conducted. The expensive furniture he had paid for would be crammed awkwardly, the legs of a $3,000 West Elm accent chair scraping against the side of a particle board bookshelf she had brought into the marriage. It was a pathetic, humiliating exodus. The voicemail messages began that evening, a predictable escalation of panic. Reece let them all go to his inbox, listening to them later like an audio engineer analyzing a vocal take for flaws. The first message, left at 6:47 p.m. Sunday, was from Zaria. Her voice was sharp with anger. "Reece, you can't be serious? You're throwing me out? After everything, you call me back right now. We need to talk about this." It was a command, not a request. She still believed she held some power. The second message came an hour later, laced with justification and a hint of desperation. "Okay, so you saw some texts. It was a stupid joke, a game. It got out of hand. It wasn't supposed to be like this. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. You have to know that." Monday morning arrived. At 9:15 a.m., Reece received a text from Ms. Vance. "Service complete. Package delivered to Ms. Hallie Jones's residence, where your wife is currently staying. Awaiting response." The third voicemail landed at 9:32 a.m. The tone had shifted entirely to pleading. "Reece, please, please, just call me. I saw the papers." "An exhibit? You put the texts in the papers? Oh my God, you can't do this. We can fix this. I know we can. I'll do anything. Please." The consequences were rippling outward, engulfing her friends. Hallie, whose apartment in a luxury building in the Gulch was now Zaria's temporary refuge, was furious. Her boyfriend, a conservative finance executive, was appalled by her involvement in such a cruel, juvenile scheme. Their relationship, which Hallie had often flaunted, was now on life support. Nova, who worked in public relations, received a call from a mutual acquaintance who had already heard a version of the story. The Nashville professional scene was a small, gossipy world. The narrative of the breakup test was spreading, and she was terrified of the damage to her professional reputation. Credibility was her currency, and she had willingly squandered it. Pia, the social media manager who had been the most vicious in the group chat, was in a state of pure terror. The threat of having her messages read aloud in a court deposition was a professional death sentence. Her entire career was built on a carefully curated online persona of positivity and empowerment, a facade that would be instantly annihilated. The fourth voicemail, left late Monday night, was the sound of a complete breakdown. It was just Zaria, crying. Not the single perfect tear from the restaurant, but ragged, ugly sobs. "I have nowhere to go," she wailed. "Hallie is kicking me out. She said I ruined her life. Nova and Pia won't even answer my calls. I lost everything, Reece. I have nothing." Reece listened to the message and felt a profound and surprising emptiness. There was no triumph, no joy in her suffering. There was only the quiet, grim satisfaction of an equation being solved. Her downfall was not his doing. It was the direct and unavoidable consequence of her own choices. He had not sought revenge, he had simply demanded accountability. The divorce was swift and brutal. Faced with the undeniable evidence and the threat of public discovery, Zaria accepted the initial settlement offer. She walked away with her clothes, her personal effects, and the white BMW 3 Series, which Reece's lawyer arranged to have paid off in full, a final clean cut costing him $14,200. She received no alimony. She received no portion of his 401k or pension. She received no part of the $850,000 house she had so casually inhabited. Within a month, she was living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Franklin for $1,500 a month. a 30-minute commute from the retail job she had to take to cover her bills. Her friends, the council, had disbanded, their bond dissolving under the acid of blame and self-preservation. They had set out to test a man's devotion, and in the process had lost their friendships, their reputations, and their own self-respect. Reece, meanwhile, had simply lost a wife he never really had in the first place. A year passes. Time, like a skilled audio engineer, smooths the harsh frequencies of the past, leaving a cleaner, more honest sound. The pain of betrayal fades, replaced by the quiet hum of a life rebuilt on a foundation of self-respect. It is a bright Saturday morning in October. The autumn sun filters through the canopy of trees at Radnor Lake State Park, painting the trail in shifting patterns of light and shadow. Reece walks with a steady, unhurried pace, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filling the air. The oppressive weight that had settled in his chest for so long is gone, replaced by a feeling of expansive peace. He is not alone. Walking beside him is Jamal, a 21-year-old audio production student from Belmont University. Jamal is bright, ambitious, and endlessly curious, his deep brown skin luminous in the morning light, his short locks bouncing as he walks. A few months ago, Reece had approached his department head at Warner with an idea, a mentorship program for promising young black engineers from local universities, providing them with the access and guidance he wished he'd had when he was starting out. The company, eager for positive community engagement, had approved it immediately. Jamal was his first mentee. So, when you're mastering, Jamal says, his voice filled with the breathless energy of youth, are you thinking more about the overall loudness for streaming platforms, or are you focused purely on the dynamics of the song itself? Reece smiles. Both. You have to serve the platform, but you can never sacrifice the soul of the track. The soul is everything. You find the truth in the performance, and you make sure nothing gets in the way of it. Everything else is just noise. Jamal nods, his eyes wide with concentration, absorbing every word. This is Reece's new life. It is a life of purpose, not of performance. His house in 12 South is no longer a stage set for someone else's desires. It is his sanctuary. The expensive coffee machine is gone, sold on Facebook Marketplace for $1,500. He uses that money to buy new recording gear for the mentorship program. He makes his coffee in a simple French press now, and it tastes better than any latte ever did. The silence in his home is no longer a sign of tension, but a canvas for his own thoughts and his own music. His work at Warner has never been better. Freed from the constant, low-level stress of his marriage, his creativity has flourished. He's been given the lead on several high-profile projects, and his reputation as one of the best engineers in Nashville is more solid than ever. His $118,000 salary feels more like a fortune now that it isn't being siphoned off to fund a lifestyle of conspicuous consumption. He is saving more than ever, building a future that is truly his own. He thinks sometimes about Zaria. He heard through the grapevine that she moved back to her hometown in Georgia, her Nashville dream having dissolved. He harbors no ill will toward her. In a quiet final email exchange mediated by their lawyers, she had offered a short, stilted apology. He had accepted it, not for her, but for himself. Forgiveness, he had learned, isn't about absolving the other person. It's about cutting the final anchor that moors you to the past. He wished her peace, and he meant it. As they round a bend in the trail, the lake comes into view, its surface a placid mirror reflecting the clear blue sky. Reece stops, taking a deep breath of the clean air. He has everything he needs, his work, his home, his peace of mind. The quiet satisfaction of helping a young man like Jamal find his own path. This, he realizes, is true wealth. It isn't an $850,000 house or a $2,400 coat. It isn't the approval of others or the performance of a perfect life. True wealth is the freedom to be authentic. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own value, independent of anyone else's appraisal. It is the ability to stand in the sunlight and feel, finally and completely, at peace in your own skin. The world can test you, it can underestimate you, it can try to break you. But as long as you hold on to the quiet truth of who you are, you can never truly be defeated. You just become stronger, clearer, and more resonant than ever before. What do you think is the most valuable thing a person can have? Is it money and possessions? Or is it peace and self-respect? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on Love Beyond Pride, where we believe the best love stories are the ones we write for ourselves.